Okay, I'll keep an eye on the door for us. Erin, welcome to South Africa. Morning for you. And yeah, Erin presented or gave in a paper as one of the papers at last year's Financial Service Board or CFP board discussions, and that's where I first engaged with Erin. And she had an interesting title on her paper, which referred to the psychology of transitions. And then we picked up the conversation earlier the year. And yeah, Erin is in practice at Mitar Enterprise Private Capital and leading Mitar Enterprise Council in the US. And she has got wide range of experience in terms of capital and how to unlock capital from investments that's not that liquid or business assets, also transition of family businesses, etc. She also BS in finance from University of Cali School of Business. She's also a certified financial planner. And then the first time that I came across a certified exit planner, and I went and looked, and it's the Exit Planning Institute. And what an interesting journey and what they offer. So that is another thing that I learned from Erin, is that whole world of exit planning, or what the Exit Planning Institute offers. So we really appreciate your time, Erin, to come and have a conversation and share some of your learning and passion with us. And also for everybody that joined us this far on the call, we always appreciate your engagement and sharing. Mary J, Marguerite, Mandy also, which just joined us. Welcome to all the familiar faces. So over to you, Erin. If you want to share a slide, I must most probably give you permission to do that, or if you're just going to talk out of the hip, whatever suits you best, you're more than welcome, Erin.
Thank you, and thank you for the generous introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. As we were saying, my background is in private wealth management. I've been in the industry since June of 2001. Hard to believe it's coming up on 21 years. During that journey, I've done a little bit of everything, working inside one of the largest registered investment advisory firms in the United States, with assets totaling around $15 billion under management. Did a lot on the investment side, as well as the financial planning and the estate planning piece of that. And through that journey, went into management. And a lot of my time was dedicated to working with founders, whether it be the management of the firm I was at, Oxford Financial Group, or working with business owners themselves directly. And part of that was acknowledging a pattern that seemed to emerge from that with these founder-led businesses, and being in financial planning, but also working in one. There were several components that stood out to me where it became a pattern. And I realized I wasn't the only person to discover this pattern. There were several people who'd done really interesting work around this behavioral element to what we do, and how to maximize and protect all of the value, preserve the value that we've built inside these businesses. My personal background's in a family business. I was the third generation of, it was heavy highway and commercial landscaping. So a little bit different than financial planning in that regard. But still the dynamics are the same in transitioning a business from a founder generation. It's a journey. It's both emotional, it's psychological, and it's financial. And so that's what the genesis of the paper was. And I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with BNY Pershing, BNY Mellon. It's a large bank, and they have an arm of that caters to wealth management firms. And the gentleman running that, the chief executive officer, who's since retired, Mark Tibergien, he and I had these really interesting conversations about what we were seeing in our industry across the landscape, as these initial registered investment advisory firms, these RIAs, were really coming to age. So they were usually, most of them, the founding generation was established in the early to mid 1980s. And so they were just now coming to 40 years old. And the founders who had originally started them were at a flux of transition. And a lot of what's happening, at least here in the United States, I'm not sure if it's thematic globally, but there's a lot of consolidation in these wealth management firms. They're really having to figure out, okay, we're at the point that we want to retire. We need to sell the business. We want a liquidity event. Now what? So that's where all these conversations began. Since my time at Oxford Financial Group, I was brought to the Wellington Group, another wealth management firm, founder led, to help the founder of Wellington, Tony Bonanno, with this. So that's what we've been focused on, is working on his succession plan, how we will transition, not just the leadership, but the equity as well. And this paper that I wrote, that Mark Tiberghien helped with and had a lot of influence on, was really regarding the psychology of this transition more than what I do. My technical background, right? We can make beautiful estate plans and equity transition plans and talk about that all day long. But what happens is when it goes into motion, there's a lot of psychology that is involved in that. And it's not just a transaction, it's a process, and how to work with these leaders through that journey. And what we talk about is, you start out in it's almost, the firms become an extension of the founder. So their personality, the culture, all of that is so centric around their ego and their own belief system, their value system. And in the beginning stages, it's like a child, right? You invest all of this time, this capital, and you build it, and it comes to the point where it's becoming its own identity, its own entity. And at that point, the founder, who's essentially been a one-man shop to this point, has built out a team around them. And then all of a sudden they've been wildly successful. And this is true in financial services, but any business that's founder-led, founder-owned, these closely held entities. Well, there comes a point, how do we scale? When do we professionalize management? And those are critical business decisions. And usually at that point, the founder still maintains full control. The founder usually wears 3 different hats. They're usually running the business, so they're the operator. They are the driver of all the relationships, so the business developer or the rainmaker. And then they're also a technical expert at whatever their business is. So there's really 3 pieces to that. And when they bring in management, they still maintain that control. So they'll bring in team around them. Usually the first one's like a CFO, a financial officer, someone to help with the financial operations of the business themselves. So starting to delegate away some of that responsibility. But what's critical in this as it occurs is that the identity of the firm remains intact. It's still founder driven, still an extension of the founder. Just like if you'd picture a teenager, right? If a life cycle of the business is mirroring the life cycle of a person, then this would be like your teenager, your 20-year-old, and finally they're out of the house, they're up and running on their own. And then what you're seeing towards the end of that cycle is when the founder themselves needs to start looking at a liquidity event or retirement. And what's interesting is that retirement, and I think this holds true in general right now in society, retirement looks very different today than what it did even 20 years ago, right? People aren't just stopping what they're doing and going off to play golf all day long. They want to remain in their business and whatever that looks like. So there's this period of transition where a founder needs to bring in a new team of equity owners and start stepping away from the business on the day-to-day operations. And that can be very difficult. It's emotional for the founder. This is their business that they've built, and whoever comes in behind them will not run it the exact same way they did. There's financial implications. They're used to having this evergreen cash flow coming in from the revenue streams of the business, and all of the items that they run through the business, what we call add backs. In that their car insurance, trips, whatever they're doing and running through there, all of that starts to go away as the transition of ownership and succession takes place. And it takes a lot of delicate conversations to do that well. And what's critical is that oftentimes it's assumed that it's a 1-for-1, right? We'll bring in a new CEO or a new owner, and it will be directly tied to just take my place situation. But that's rarely an effective method to transition this, as it's not a 1-for-1 trade. As we discussed, there's usually 3 components to that founder, right? So the operator, the business development relationship manager, and then the technical expert. So it will take 2 or 3 individuals to start filling the obligations of that founder. And it's not usually that skill set that they can do all 3 is not common. That's why they started the business. So those coming in will likely not have that same profile as you look at their skill sets and what they bring to the table. So most effectively, often what we see are people coming in, and you'll have one technical expert, you'll have someone running the relationships. Those might be the same person. And then you'll have the person that actually runs the business on the day-to-day, that's operating and managing the financial operations. But through all of that, to protect that founder is to watch and make sure that the team that you bring in to surround him, and even when they're still active and in the heyday of the middle of the career, bringing that team around the founder is critical to preserving the culture. And if the wrong people are let in the gate or let in that inner circle, it could quickly deteriorate the culture. And when the culture deteriorates inside, it will have a direct correlation to the outward appearance of that brand. So keeping that in mind when hiring into this and then looking towards succession, it really is a reflection of what the firm should look like in the coming years. So that, and then on the financial planning side of it, and working and supporting these business owners is what's next after. So you get through all of that, and then they are in somewhat of a quasi-retirement. It looks different for founders. They like to stay active. That's when a lot of other opportunities, such as sitting on boards, participating in other businesses, being an advisory member, different opportunities that present themselves will be critical to keeping that business owner engaged and busy even into retirement. And there's a lot of value that they can lend to younger business owners starting, that their experiences are extremely valuable and can be used to help mentor and grow other younger generations that are trying to come in and establish their own paths. So Hendrik, how's that?
No, that's fine. Perhaps any questions that came up for anybody while listening to Erin, or comments that which you yourself dealt with, that you see that you can relate with what Erin was sharing? Renata?
Yeah, I think what Erin said about the culture and the, let's call it the brand and the awareness of, let's call it the humanness, is so important, because this is something that I've also seen is it's difficult when people want to transition out and want to bring in the new human, but they are not on the same page, and how quickly things can fall apart. So it's really so important that you bring in the right people, but then you also don't want to just bring in mini-me. Sometimes you want to bring in someone that can add, that can contribute more than just more of the same. Because sometimes it's time to shake it up a bit and to bring in something new, something to take the business to the next level. So even though you want one party to exit, you want the new people that come in to also, take it to the next level. So it's a balancing act. It's a very fine balancing act, but you do need to be very mindful of the human factor, the culture, and the contribution, the unique contributions of all the parties. So I think that is a point to be mindful of. And thanks for sharing that, Erin. It was very insightful.
Thank you. That's an excellent point that you make in regards to what's the new leadership going to contribute. It has to be a balance of bringing in new, fresh ideas in a way that's not disruptive to the organization, but still propels them to be forward and more innovative. And maybe it's time to not do things the same way that they've always done things. That's a very dangerous philosophy as well. So balancing the old with the new is critical for the long-term growth and health of the organization.
Mark.
Hi, thanks. That was hugely insightful. The question that I want to raise is that whole valuation of the business, if I could put it that way. We always talk to clients and say, look, business interruption cover, they'll say, why is it only for 2 years? We'll say, well, because, the feeling is that if something's happened to you and you're not going to be able to come back, you're better off selling the business, because so much of that valuation is goodwill. It's the you. So how in that transition do you handle the fact that for so many people, it's the person who's there at the moment who's the value, and bringing in somebody new? Yes, it's great, fresh ideas, all of that, but it's not you. It might be somebody who does things totally different to you, and I don't want to talk alienation, but some people might not relate. So how do you phase in the new while phasing out the old? I guess what I'm trying to say is, what sort of period do you feel is the right length of time to have the hand holding, the let's go together and meet these people, and so they can perceive the value in you, and not just, oh, you're selling your business, I'm along for the ride whether I like it or not. I hope it makes sense.
That makes complete sense. And that's an excellent question. And it's the short answer is it depends. It depends on the business, the type of business, the owners, the type of sale. There are a few different types of transactions. You can sell to a strategic buyer. So that's someone where your business would fold into a larger piece of that. You could have a financial buyer where someone's buying it as more of a passive investment. Or you could have an internal succession plan as well. And so with any of those, aside from the internal succession plan, you're going to have someone coming in from the outside. Some of the transactions will go faster than others, but if you're looking at the timeline, it depends on how ingrained that founder is and how critical they are to the actual relationships, and not just with clients, but with the vendors as well. You'll see that they'll get all of those contracts negotiated, or maybe there are no contracts and it's just, oh, this has been my friend for 30 years. But that could be a supply issue and it impact the valuation of the business. So that being said, the first step one, the actual foundational component of that would be looking at all of the business relationships and making sure that prior to any type of transition or announcement that there are contracts in place. So whether it's a service agreement with the vendors, that everything's documented, so that and this should be done anyways, because if something were to happen to a founder or the owner of the business and everything's with them, that business can go from very healthy to in a state of peril should something happen, unforeseeable death, disability, even in front of a transition. So having advisors around them to help professionalize the relationship is the first step to protecting the revenue. In terms of the transition, it would really depend on the business itself. Here in the US, a lot of the small businesses, if I go to purchase a business and I need funding from the Small Business Association, it's required that the founder be out in a year. They only have 12 months where they can consult or be a part. So there's that legal obligation. A lot of times, especially in financial services, like our industry, whether it's an internal relationship, advisor transition, it can span out 2 to 5 years. And then usually with the transaction itself, say it's a purchase, I'm buying a business and it's depending on how you finance it, it would be on a sliding scale. So if I'm the seller, I'm only going to get paid, call it 70% of the total proceeds. The rest goes into an escrow account and it'll get paid out over X number of years, usually 2 years, based on very clearly defined retention numbers and revenue protection numbers, so that everyone has the same buy-in to want that transition to be successful. And that that in that earn-out scenario, the seller is going to be able to participate and be motivated to help you transition those relationships. And to your point about what if the new person isn't accepted, that's part of a lot of what we do is numeric, quantitative. That's the qualitative, the art of what we do is finding those relationships where it's not going to be you. It will never be you, but it's going to be someone that the clients and the vendors and anyone else, all those strategic partnerships, that they're comfortable with and that they will embrace. And that's part of why it's as much of an art as it is a science, is getting that right. And the seller will know. The seller knows their client base. They know the people they work with and around. And so the combination of the planning in front of any type of announcement, getting everything secured, formalizing, professionalizing the business itself prior to any transaction will help support and bolster that valuation and hopefully support a more healthy transition and success of a transaction. Did that answer?
So what you're saying is, so what you're saying is step number 1, transition 101, is you've got to find somebody that you feel your clients will click with. Mm-hmm. That's effectively what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, would you let someone, I don't know if you have children, but would you let someone that had wildly different values and thoughts as you raise your child should something happen to you, right? That's how you have to think about it. They'll never be you, but at the same time, if there's certain values or a culture or anything that's important to you, you will look for that in the person that would succeed you. So they will be a reflection and they will have your blessing and those around will know that.
So the one question, and it's linking to what Marcus said, Erin, that I was pondering on here and what I had experience on is, and you touched on that in your introduction, is that emotional bond that the starter owner have got with the business. What do you see in practice? What works best from a psychological transition way of getting them to let go of the business? That's the one part. And then the other part is also making sure that you protect the value that you want to unlock in the process.
So that's $1 million question, right? Is how to help the founders through this. And it depends on where they are with regard, like what is triggering a transaction can really impact how to approach it. If they're being forced to sell, it's going to be a lot more difficult than if they've realized on their own that it's time to sell. And part of that is helping them see what the future of the business will look like once they step back and what potential can be unlocked. Because if they understand that they are in the way of their own success and that they're in, by not having, even if the plan, and highly recommended that the plan wouldn't go into effect for 5 to 10 years when they create this exit strategy, by having a plan at all for their own succession, the business is inherently more valuable. So helping them see, no one likes to talk about these things. No one likes to talk about their death. No one likes to talk about, being disabled or retiring, because we're human. And that's, has to do with our mortality. And that scares people, especially the fear of becoming irrelevant and not being so much of your identity is tied to this business. Once that goes away, then redefining, who am I? What value am I adding? So talking about that earlier on in a way that is more, by showing the growth and the value that occurs from having those conversations, even though they're uncomfortable, and saying, that it empowers them to determine their own exit. It empowers them to unlock that value in their business, and it empowers them to preserve a legacy. If something happens and this isn't in place, what legacy do you have to give? It's very limited. So you're doing them a favor by helping guide them and plan through this. And they're leaving their business. And this is, it sounds harsh, but it's true. You're leaving your business one way or another. Like, one way you're leaving this business. So we can make a plan, and it's going to be wonderful, and it's going to be what you want. And all this hard work that you've done and built over these years, all your sweat, tears that you've poured into this, the sacrifices that you have made, you will be able to monetize that and make sure that all this great work that you're doing is there after you step back. So, and then helping them identify and really visualize what post transition looks like. So what will you do? Identify 3 things that you will do post-retirement that will still provide value, that will still create value, and that will, make whatever's important to them. If it's philanthropic, if it's other business adventures, and sometimes that's the case. They aren't retiring. Maybe they're going to do something new, a new venture. So that's the case with my new partner with Mytar. He's only 52 years old. He's not done working. He's going to start something new and fulfill a different dream. So exiting one is more of creating an opportunity for that next chapter. So it doesn't have to be the finale either. It's just moving on to another chapter.
So what I hear is that importance of the nearly like to say there's 3 phases to the process. There's a pre, and the earlier you actually start planning for that, the easier it's going to be. And then there's the peri in the middle of the transition, getting the right partners on board, doing the transitioning the business. And then there's a most probably opportunity from an advisor, financial coach viewpoint is you've got now the client that exited that you can continue a relationship with, and you've got the new business owners that took over the business. That's also now your new clients. So also a huge opportunity for you to be involved in that whole transition process.
Yes, very well said.
So if I could jump in, so would I be, what's the right word? Would it be a sort of a devil's advocate thing to say that really what you're talking about here is that sort of moral, ethical imperative as to just how much importance do you put in your relationship with the clients? Because I don't know what it's like in America, but here we have a situation where there are a lot of very big brokerages who have as one of their business objectives to bring in smaller brokers with that whole, what are you going to do about succession? And the problem that I always had with that was that, yes, that was very much just a financial decision. That was, they're offering me X, it's an easy way out. There's no, but then I had really no control over who gets allocated to my clients after the fact. Whereas what you're saying is that if we get this process going now, we can do this on a one-on-one basis, if I could put it that way, or tie ourselves to a smaller FSP that's going to provide what we really want our clients to receive. That we know there's more of a certainty that happening. Would that be a fair thing to say?
It's an excellent point, and it based on what you said there, it seems similar to what's occurring here in the U.S. So there are firms that will aggregate, right? They'll take you as a financial service provider, you and your clients, and you'll roll into them, or they'll be acquired, or there'll be a merger. And the question that you pose is what's the conversation that's happening in the industry right now? We haven't been in this long enough to know the long-term consequences of all of these financial transactions. And you're right, most of them are financially motivated and driven. And then the clients arrive, and the relationships, what we do is so personal, right? It's a very intimate relationship with our clients, discussing finances, and there's so much trust. We are in a relationship business. So those can't just be reassigned. Even if you can on paper, it doesn't work out that way. So I don't know what the long-term implications are, but the firms that are doing better and having more success, they are the ones that are focusing on culture matches where the value systems are aligned, and that the clients will follow their advisor no matter what. So once you get everyone there, you need to create an environment that is not just providing you great trading platforms or operations or compliance. It needs to support the relationship and the advisors and focus on bringing in talent that is vertical in nature, meaning they're building a bench to continue to serve your clients long after you retire. And the firms that are investing in that right now, and I know the College for Financial Planning and the CFP board, they're very focused on these career paths for this reason, because they know that it's going to be disruptive when this top group of advisors start retiring out, and it will have financial cascade impact. There's no way it won't. So I don't know what will happen, but the firms that are going to invest in the what I call the human alpha, your human capital, they're going to come out ahead. And I think I can't remember who it was, maybe Mercer, someone there wrote an article recently, and in that they included the statistics for 3 of the publicly traded on the US exchange, publicly traded financial services firms. I know that CI Financial out of Canada was on there, Focus Financial, and I can't remember the third, but they benchmarked them to see how that they were performing. And the ones that I think CI was in last, and they've been the most liberal with overpaying essentially for firms to do these financial acquisitions. So time will tell. There's going to be a lot of pressure to retain the clients and the relationships. So that our assets, they're not tangible, right? They're softer. So that will be yet to be determined. I'm curious, just like you are. I don't know yet.
I think the bottom line is going to be you've got to make a decision yourself. As a financial advisor, before you do anything, you need to make a decision. What are you going to prioritize? Because that could have a financial impact. Speaking for myself, I almost joined a big brokerage, and I thought, no, I just have no guarantee how my clients will be treated. I think I've got a better chance of finding, I'm not talking a Mark 2.0, God forbid. I don't think they could put up with more than one of me. But I know, it's not about the rands in the cents or the dollars in your case. It's about when I engage with a client, they're a client for life, and hopefully their life will be longer than mine. So I need to know that somebody's going to want to care the way I do. So I've gone the smaller route. So I value what you said, because it justifies putting the effort in now. I mean, I'm 53, so I've still got a long way to go, just like the person you spoke about. But it's important for me to know, that they're going to be with somebody who cares. It's not just about their end in the sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And that's a wonderful perspective to have. And how are you doing that? Will you bring in other advisors to work alongside of you to transition those relationships?
Yeah, so I've joined a smaller brokerage where, ironically, I'm sort of succession for somebody older, but there's somebody younger, and then we've got a new trainee who's come in, and she's sort of doing the paraplanning route, and we're grooming her. So, nothing better happened to her.
Yeah, and retaining that talent is going to be more and more challenging because there's a shortage, at least here. I don't know where you are, if that's the case, but keeping in mind as you do your own transition planning for the firm, for the brokerage, is what the opportunity cost of. Sometimes what I've seen in our industry is that the people wait too long to transition equity or any type of financial motivators that would incentivize someone to stay for the long term. So putting skin in the game, making sure everyone's on the same page in terms of what's motivating them to stay and do good work. Because if you're not offering it, then somebody else will, and your succession plan will leave. So that's important to remember as part of the plan.
Very valid point. Thank you. Yeah, excellent point. Thank you.
Mary J, you can go.
Oh, thanks, Hendrik. I was going to say, this is the part of the conversation I'm interested in, is why, and one of the questions I wrote down here was, why does transition and succession only happen at the end? Like, why are we not doing it sooner? Because I'm part of that generation, the millennials and younger. We don't want to wait 30 years for you to decide that we've earned our way to own something. We want that skin in the game now. So how is that transition happening before that? And what are those mind shifts that the baby boomers and the ones below them need to have to be able to let go sooner? To create that. Oh, this is fun. Because there's new business models, and in fact, in my business, we're busy playing with it in creating equal ownership opportunities for anyone who joins the business from the start, so that they can earn their way to getting equity and not have to sit and wait till the very end. And as part of that, have a say in how the business is run and the culture and all of that. So I don't know if there's anything like that that's happening in the US either.
Oh yes, most definitely. This conversation comes up, and I love it. Being the oldest of the millennials, it's something that I feel like I sit on both sides of the fence, because I hear the conversations happening differently, and the comments that I'll make are probably very broad in general. So I know that everyone's different and everyone's unique. So speaking in generalities, though, how the boomers came in is very different than how the millennials are coming in. And the business mindset was different. They expected to wait and work really, really hard and earn their keep. And one day someone will bless you and say, you will become an equity partner. And they were fine waiting to that. The millennials, and especially Gen Z, they will not do that. They need fluidity. They need to feel like they're creating value immediately. So they want to put skin in the game. They want to know that their employer is going to invest in them, and that they're not just an employee, but they're a partner, and that their voice matters. So it's really firm by firm how this is being handled. And again, the firms that embrace this and manage to the changing, the generational shift are going to come out ahead. So there are firms now where they either do an equity transition plan early on, right? They'll start, because you don't just want to give away equity, and you don't want to dilute yourself, and you don't want to do any of that. So all kinds of things, from phantom equity plans that convert, shadow boards where you have a board of millennials that sit alongside your senior board. I saw, oh goodness, it was over the US Thanksgiving holiday of Thanksgiving in November. And it showed this family gathering for dinner, and they were all there, and all of a sudden it had these young adults, probably in their mid-20s, all carrying a different drink, like a beer or a margarita or whatever they had, and they're all walking out, and it said going to the kids table. And I thought, that's really profound. I mean, it was funny. I got the humor, like, no matter how old you get, you're still at the kids table. But I was thinking about the boardroom. Of course, my mind's on work, and I'm like, that's true, because we're doing a big disservice to our firms by not giving up seats at the table sooner. And those who will not do that, they're missing out on a whole fresh perspective and new ideas from people in their organization. And you're going to have this whole group of people my age that are not going to know how to act in a boardroom. They're not going to know how to sit at the grown-ups table because they never had a chance. And then all of a sudden it's a hot potato, and we're tossing these businesses to a 40-year-old and then saying, why don't you know how to do this? Why don't you know how to be a professional? I mean, there's going to be a need for change, and it's happening right now. So we're living it. The firms are all doing it differently. Multi-generational workforces are essential. So having, to what Mark said, someone older and that top, call it towards the end of their career, there to teach everyone, to mentor, to guide, to say, I've seen this, here's some things to think about, to mid-career, to even younger ones in the organization. You need everyone there participating with a voice to make it a successful organization. And larger firms are starting, the big companies know this. McDonald's did a survey, and they found that the stores that were functioning and the most profitable had employees over 60 as a regular part of their workforce. So maybe someone that's retired and wanted to do something. And they found that the younger generations, while they might ignore someone my age because it reminds them of their parents, they would listen to someone that reminds them of their grandparents. And so they didn't want to disappoint them. So those stores had a higher success rate. And I think that small examples like that are important, and we need to be paying attention. So you raise an excellent point, Mary. It's critical that we do this, and we do it smartly and in a way that doesn't take away from all the hard work that the founding generation put in, but also the founding generation acknowledges the opportunity cost to have a business that's going to outlive them, that they're going to have to give some of that up as a way to retain and attract the best talent out there.
And is it also give up, or is it share, or is it multiply? Because that's also in part of like the way we've been looking at building the business we're in. It's not a pie that gets shared. We're baking new pies. So anyone that joins, and you mentioned it earlier about replacing the founder, it's like they should be adding, they should be bringing and contributing something.
I love that.
To
I'm going to borrow
continue
it. Multiply. I like it.
Multiply.
Yeah. I'm borrowing that.
And it also speaks to the culture. It speaks to having repeatable processes. It speaks to having ways to engage from task management to culture and values alignment. That there has to be close connection between all the employees or all the people within a business to make sure that you are multiplying the pie, not just splitting the pie.
Yeah, because that makes everything smaller, right? When you close it off and not allowing anyone in. How is your firm doing it now? What are the types of conversations that you're having? What are you hearing?
So it's just two of us at the moment. I'm the founder. And I suppose I put the edge because I'm the millennial founder. But it was working through my own psychology of letting go and wanting to bring some people in to multiply, and being willing to create that pathway where they're going to get the same amount of equity that I have eventually, but not sort of negotiating what that pathway looks like. And I think for me too, that's also important. It's a negotiation. It's not just me dictating to them, you have to do this, and jump through these hoops to get that. It's, well, how are we building and multiplying the pie? What is the vision? This is where I started, but can you contribute to the vision? How does it look for you? And what are we building together? And then how do we measure the stages towards that vision and reward you along the way, so that there is that buy-in and that commitment and that alignment. So we're in the early stages, but it's Marguerite that's showing me. He's here in the room, and we formalized it contractually, and we're now like walking this process of, you know, her being the first person to merge and join, and how do we expand it further than us, because we want it to be bigger, but not much bigger, you know, like 10 people maximum. It still should be a personal service.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's not easy. It's hard work. It's a lot of strategy. It's a lot of time working on the business. It's a lot of time having hard conversations. You know, the finances, the money, the details, what psychological stuff are you bringing? What am I bringing? And that's possibly also what puts the older generations off from doing it, is having to sit in those conversations and sit with younger people, with people who have different and new ideas, and making room for that.
Excellent. So do you think, to the both of you, do you think that those you bring in will be comfortable and confident to come to the table and have those negotiations? Because a lot of times it's intimidating. The founding team, it's intimidating for others to come in and sit at the table and have those conversations.
That's up to the founder, isn't it? Like, they're the one that has to shift and create that space. Because if they don't, it can't happen.
But it's definitely something to be mindful of. Sorry, Marguerite.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think what Mary and I are very intentionally trying to do is to build a business that is a psychologically safe space in which people are valued for the contribution they bring, and where we grow alongside each other. And it starts with us. If we can create and build that and build it into the culture of the business, and then bring other people along on the journey, self-care and reflective practices are also part of what we're actually doing in our business, and reviewing on a regular basis during our strategy sessions. So we're really trying to make it part of the culture of the business.
It's excellent. I think it's a wonderful model, and it's the right time to be introducing this vision and this strategy. And there are a lot of advisors and people in general looking for these types of opportunities, and there's not a lot of places to find it. So kudos to you. I can't wait to follow your success and see how it grows, and the challenges, and what happens when you get to person number 11.
Sorry, Mark. Go, Mark.
I think the benefit that they've got is it's the two of them. And I think it's just like we talk about finding the right person who will click with your clients. It's finding people that you click with from a business perspective as well. So, for example, if that person demonstrates that they're willing to put the effort in. So, for example, we've got to have the relevant RE, whether it be as a key individual or as a rep, as a representative. So if you've got somebody who's come in and of their own volition has done the key individual that as well, to show, I'm willing to put my hand up and be part of the team. Because you're right, you talk about being multiplicative, or I think it's more a question of making that pie bigger. But you've also got to remember that, for example, if there's only one person who's the KI at the moment, with a whole lot of little Indians underneath, something happens to their chief, then they're all tribalists. So you can have all these plans. If you haven't made sure that the current setup is safe, then all this planning can amount to nothing.
And you can build that in contractually, and as part of our process, as Marguerite alluded to it as well, we've got personal growth plans and business growth plans. So like what are you wanting to study and explore and grow, how to grow yourself professionally? So you can create those pathways to build more KIs and have people ready to take those seats as and when they need to. It's a lot to dovetail. There are many parallel processes that we're running.
I think there's also a part of where's the business in its growth phase. And the other day I've got this thing about philosophically for a long time now already around what is enough. And I was delving into this, and I came across a guy that started a business, and the one part of the business is a property business, and what he's doing as new employees that comes into that part of the business. And I think Mary J, you talked a little bit about that. What he got a figure in his mind which he says is enough for him, and he's prepared to give the rest off. So if new employees come in, they don't get the full amount of the equity that's there, but over time, the longer they stay in the firm, and they also know contractually if they do X, Y, Z, they'll get more and more a bigger share of that investments. And then his core business, interesting, and he says that's an experiment. He's paying everybody exactly the same amount, irrespective if you're the secretary or him as the MD or whatever. Everybody earns exactly the same amount of money. So yeah, so I think there's different ways we can explore. That's most probably he says his friends calls him a socialist. So yeah, that's fine. So
salaries, I mean, we didn't really speak explicitly about it yet, but I think salaried, and that shift to salaried employees too, not eat what you kill, which is also a shift away from the sales and the broking model, is also important. And if anyone doesn't know Ricardo Semler, he is a Brazilian entrepreneur, and there's some incredible documentaries and things on YouTube about him. He talks about transparency around salaries too. So I love that idea of the same salary for everyone. That's an interesting one. But also giving employees the ability to see what everyone else is earning. So complete transparency and the ability to motivate and set their own salaries. But it is justified. What are you contributing? What is that output, that value? How is that measured? But involving them in that conversation, not just creating these random market-related salary levels and expecting people to just take it or leave it, but really going to that intrinsic motivation of each unique individual, which also speaks to wellness programs and the other side of running businesses. Like, what are the other ways of how our people are being treated and rewarded and incentivized and taken care of from a self-care perspective, which is also culture.
It's all very interesting. Thank you so much for allowing me to join your group today. It's been a lot of fun. I love hearing great thinking and thought leadership, especially from a location a little bit different than what I'm used to. It's never surprising to me how we're all facing similar challenges, no matter where we're at, looking at the same business challenges and opportunities. And I love hearing fresh ideas and how other people are approaching the work they do. And it's been very refreshing to be on this call. So thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Louis, will you perhaps, if I can put you on the spot, you didn't talk, just do a thanks for us, please. And a closing thought, perhaps. Thanks, Louis.
Thank you, Hendrik. Thank you, Erin. As someone that's been studying transitions, this really resonated with me because it's all about the psychology and the human part. We can spend so much time getting the technical right, which is important, but you've just brought the two together so nicely today. And thank you for being here and sharing with us on the other side of the world.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you to everybody that was on the call. We really appreciate it. And Erin, also thanks a mil, and all of the best. We've got a big surprise for next month also, so watch the space. So yeah, all of the best and have a wonderful month, and all of the best for your businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.